What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel.
No changes in the SEC East from last week. Now, we have made some changes since the preseason, but Georgia is at 11-1, still 11-1 for me. That's where I had them last week, had them in the preseason. No change. I think they lose somewhere along the way. I'm kind of circling that Auburn game on the road. That could be the one they trip up on, or maybe they lose to Florida. Who knows? The Gators are 9-3, 5-3 in the conference. If they beat Auburn this weekend, I think I would bump them up at least to 10-2. We'll see. That's going to be a big test for them with Kyle Trask stepping in his first big game at quarterback. But we've been 9-3 throughout. Missouri 8-4. We've been the same on Missouri from the beginning at 8-4, so no change there. South Carolina 5-7. Last week we were 5-7. Preseason we were 6-6. The big problem for South Carolina is that game against North Carolina. I did not have them losing that game, and that's the game, in my opinion, that's going to keep them from making a bowl game. Kentucky 7-5. I know they're 0-3 in the conference, but I still have faith in this team. They have a pretty favorable schedule coming up. They're not going to beat Georgia probably, but there are some more wins I think they can get, and so I like this Kentucky team. Quarterback position is obviously a big concern with Terry Wilson going down. Sawyer Smith also banged up, so that's worth watching. We might wind up dropping them a little bit lower, but for now I'm going to stick with 7-5, which is actually lower than our preseason prediction. That was 8-4. Vanderbilt 5-7. They've had a tough schedule to start out the season. They finally got a win. They're 1-3 overall. 5-7 is where we had them last week. Had them at 4-8 in the preseason, so we've bumped it up a little bit. And Tennessee has been awful. 3-9, which is where we had them last week. I had them 6-6 in the preseason. Wasn't real high on this team, but I thought they would at least be able to get to a bowl game. Certainly didn't expect them to lose to Georgia State, but now I'm still going to say they find a way to win one conference game. But I'm starting to think maybe they won't, so we'll see about Tennessee. In the West, we have made, I guess, no changes here either from last week. So last week to this week, no changes in the SEC at all. Alabama, I still think, wins the West, going undefeated at 12-0, but I'm starting to believe more and more that LSU or Auburn could give them a loss this season. LSU 11-1. That's where we had them last week. Had them at 10-2 in the preseason, so we bumped them up one game. I think they have a legitimate chance against Alabama coming up here in several weeks. That is going to be a great game. Auburn at 9-3. That's where we've had them throughout the season, preseason. But if they beat Florida, I'll go ahead and tell you right now, if they beat Florida this weekend, I will be moving Auburn to 10-2. Because I think they might have a real shot to beat Georgia. If they lose the game to Florida, we might drop them to 8-4. We'll have to see how they look in that game. A lot of different factors go into this because we have to do all the teams each week. Maybe I see them doing a little better, a little bit worse. This Florida game, again, is a huge game for Auburn. Texas A&M at 7-5. That's where we've had them throughout the season. Preseason, I was never real high on this Texas A&M team. I know a lot of preseason polls had them in the top 10. I did not. And obviously I've missed the mark on some teams, but Texas A&M, I think we have pretty much nailed. Mississippi State, same story there, 7-5, no changes there. Ole Miss at 4-8. I'm getting close to ready to bump them up a game, though. I think this Ole Miss team might surprise some people. The loss in the non-conference, and the two losses of the non-conference to Cal and Memphis really hurt them, and I think could keep them out of a bowl game. But I might go back to 5-7. This is a team, again, that is starting to look a lot better. And honestly, I think Ole Miss has looked better than Mississippi State the last couple of weeks. Arkansas at the bottom, though. They almost beat Texas A&M this past weekend. Couldn't quite pull it off. 3-9. I don't see them winning a game in the SEC. But maybe we change this around. Maybe we give Arkansas a win and take that win away from Tennessee. A long ways to go, but who knows? Maybe that could be the way we go with it as we continue to update these predictions each and every week. So we've still got Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship. We have not made a change there, but I tell you what, it's looking more and more likely that we could maybe see LSU or Auburn win the West. It's possible. Georgia's still a front runner in the East, but don't count out Florida. We'll look at those percentages here in just a second. But yeah, this would be the matchup here in the SEC championship. And again, I go back to what I said last week. I just feel like Alabama is ahead of Georgia offensively. Georgia might have the better defense, but I think it's pretty close. But I think there's a pretty good gap with all the weapons Alabama has around Tua Tagovailoa. at the wide receiver position, and that's where I'm really talking about. It's the passing attack for Alabama that I think will make a difference in this game. So I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide to beat Georgia in the SEC Championship. Alabama will win the SEC Championship. I've stayed consistent with this all the way from the preseason up until now. Each and every week I have still stuck with Alabama, but I don't feel as confident as I did in the preseason. And again, the confidence level in Alabama seems to be going down more and more each week. So who knows, a few more games into this season and I might change that pick. I may not even have Alabama winning the West, or maybe I have them losing to Georgia in this game, or maybe I put Florida in there. Who knows? A lot still to happen this college football season and a lot to still find out. But our odds to win the division, this hasn't changed at all. I left the percentages the same from last week. Alabama, I still think they're at 60% to win the West because they get LSU at home, and because even if they were to lose the Iron Bowl to Auburn probably is going to lose a couple of games. Maybe they just lose one other game, though. Maybe we have a three-way tie between these three teams. And if there is a three-way tie, I won't go into the details, but I can tell you it would go to Auburn. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And after Auburn plays Florida, you may see their percentage go way up, or maybe even go down if they were to lose. Georgia still, I think, with a pretty big advantage over Florida. I've got them at 80%, but Florida still hanging in there. And if Florida can beat Auburn, you might see Florida's number go way up here. That's a big game coming up this weekend in the SEC. Odds to win the conference, we're going to still stick with Alabama as the favorite. Obviously, I just picked them to win the conference, so I'm going to put them as the favorites. But Georgia is creeping up on Alabama because of the fact that they have an easier path. So there's a greater chance of Georgia winning the East than there is Alabama winning the West. In my opinion, they have an easier path to the SEC Championship, and that's why the percentage is very close. But I still favor Alabama. Georgia at 20%, Florida at 8%, Auburn at 7%. If Auburn beats Florida, obviously those percentages might change. But again, it goes back to the path. Florida has an easier path than Auburn to get to Atlanta. So those are updated projections for the SEC. You guys can give me your thoughts down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports SEC Football Channel.